This is TWiT.
Apple and Qualcomm, the trial began yesterday with jury impanelment. According to CNBC, this came out just a few minutes ago. They've settled. They announced in a press release the settlement includes a payment from Apple to Qualcomm, as well as a chipset supply agreement, which would be a great relief for Apple. Maybe not so much for Intel, but Apple has been having trouble getting those Qualcomm chips, went to Intel. Intel had to have a crash program to make the radios and so forth. Apple stock up less than 1%. Qualcomm, I'll have to check that again, though. This is an old story now. Qualcomm up 13%. This was one of those things that could have gone on for a decade more. It was ugly. There were billions of dollars in claims in both directions. In November, Qualcomm CEO Steve Mollenkopf said he thought the two companies were on the doorstep to a settlement. Tim Cook said, nuh-uh.
Where are you again?
Nuh-uh. So the full press release is short. I will read it in its entirety now. Do not go get a sandwich. Qualcomm and Apple today announced an agreement to dismiss all litigation between the two companies worldwide. The settlement includes a payment from Apple to Qualcomm. The companies have also reached a 6-year license agreement effective April 1st, 2019, including a 2-year option to extend and a multi-year chipset supply agreement. And that's it.
Yeah. We got to go through this again in 8 years.
Yeah, in 8 years we'll be back. No, I think it's over now for sure, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That must have been a really late-breaking development, because it seems more often than not when these things have been in the works for a long time, they've already lined up who they're going to leak the information to make sure that the background information about this and other details that they don't actually have to support in public get out there. The fact that there is a 1-paragraph summation plus I've been ever since the break, I've been doing nothing but looking at news sources, and every single news item is entirely about how this is affecting Intel stock, Qualcomm stock, Apple stock. Qualcomm is up 16 points rather. Intel took a big dip, but seems to have recovered. Apple is up just a little bit, but yeah, it looks like there are a lot of it's basically that Qualcomm made $9.7 billion just on the basis of people knowing that they've settled their disagreements with Apple. Yeah. So that shows you
Here's the Huawei thing? Was it the Huawei offer to help that put them all over the edge?
Here's the Qualcomm chart for this is today. I think you can see exactly when the announcement was made. The market is not closed, right? It's got another hour to go. So this kind of surprising they would make this announcement before the market closed.
And also, we don't know the details, and it's amazing the market would react that strongly without at least some form of details.
Yeah.
We don't know that.
Well, yeah, I think the assumption here then, based on the way the market is going, is that Qualcomm will continue to be able to charge the prices that it charges, which is a huge benefit to Qualcomm, and it's not necessarily any kind of benefit to phone makers like Apple. So I think the settlement is a big deal for Qualcomm, because they can continue sort of as business as usual into the future, based on the fact that Apple that the two of them came to a settlement. Obviously, we don't know what was in the settlement. If the settlement was something along the lines of Qualcomm will now reduce the prices that it charges for its chips, or it will no longer require a license for the chipsets, I don't know. But I think the implication is that Qualcomm doesn't have to reduce its prices, which is a big boon for that company.
I'm not sure that that's the case. I'm sure that, remember, Apple's stock price is conditioned by a lot of stuff. Qualcomm is a little simpler. And honestly, I think just the removal of this hanging over Qualcomm's head, no matter what the deal is, and the fact that Apple will continue to buy Qualcomm chips is enough to say for the market to say that's good news.
Their modem? Does that mean Apple has to put their modem in the drawer now? Would that have to be part of it?
Well, that's what I wonder. Yeah, well,
at least for the next 6 years.
Do you think we'll know? You think that'll get leaked out? I guess it has to, because we'll know what chips are going in.
I think that I think that we've just seen Apple announce, here's how long it will take us to develop our own modem chip.
6 to 8 years.
No less than 6 years.
Yeah.
I'm being serious there. If they had something that they thought that they could launch in a year or two, I have a hard time believing that they would have settled this. It really shows you how important a Qualcomm chipset is to any company that wants to launch a 5G phone anytime in the next 2 years.
That's not
it's hard
Huawei.
To match.
Yeah, and
isn't that where?
Go ahead.
Isn't that where we're sort of getting into that friend sort of specifics here of like once a company is making something that becomes so ubiquitous within technology that they have to start kind of navigating toward this sort of fair competition amongst the rest of the other tech people. It really does seem like Qualcomm is kind of stepping into that friend sort of realm when it comes to their modems.
Qualcomm has stepped right in it already. They're being chased after by every law internationally regarding anti-competitive behavior. They're required to make sure that they make their technology available to all comers on a sort of equal-ish basis. I mean, they don't have to give the same price to everybody, but they can't simply decide that this is because this is such an important technology, they can't say that, well, we're only going to allow Huawei, we're only going to allow Samsung to have access to these chips, or we're going to charge double, triple, quadruple at the drop of a hat. And so this will, I imagine that this will also help them out on that score, where other companies are going to maybe think twice about suing them if even Apple decided to fold, given their war chest, given their resources, and given their ability to simply take a hit for a couple of years. That's got to send some chills to anybody in the garage building their own phone.
What may have also, I mean, this is on the eve of the trial, right? So who knows? It could have been that they saw that Major League Baseball player in the jury and they went, "Oh no, we got to settle." But more likely, I think Apple did a calculus. I think you're exactly right that they said, "Look, 5G. It could be something as simple as we need 5G in the next iPhone. We're not going to have it ready. We've got to get Qualcomm chips. That's just the way it is." It could have been that kind of thing that ultimately was the final pressure. It's
also possible that, because they're going to have to meet both ways, because Qualcomm's got to want to settle too, and Apple's not paying them, and they've complained bitterly about how much money that's costing them.
Well, that's one reason the stock price went up so much. They're going to get some of that money finally.
Being a silicon merchant is not like it sounds like it's profitable, but Qualcomm has had a lot of trouble making non-phone chips profitably over the last few years, because literally they did not have the money to do things like mobile chips at any scale at the price that manufacturers are willing to pay for it. And if they get a huge influx of capital, that's probably hugely beneficial to them as well.
So we don't know how much. Really the only substantive thing we know is that Apple did write a check, could have been for $1, but more importantly, agreed to buy 6 years of Qualcomm chips for the next 6 years, and with an option for 2 more. I think that's really the bottom line on this. And that's
all I know is that I no longer have to spend the next 8 months to 3 years reading PDFs of court filings.
I know, hallelujah, huh?
And pretending to understand.
I was actually looking forward to this.
Lory.
I wanted to see how this was going to go. I was really looking. I'm very fascinated with this kind of idea of these tech companies that are kind of, when they get too big and there's this sort of like the fair use kind of idea of when does a company get to protect its assets and when does it have to kind of be a little bit more equal. So I was actually hoping for some closure on this particular thing, because I think like both Apple and Qualcomm had some pretty good arguments from just the information that I've read about it. And I don't know. So we just have to wait for the next company to jump on that board to find out what's really going to happen. It's a bummer for me.
It could be usually this kind of thing is settled before you go to trial. The threat of going to trial and of discovery often is sufficient to bring the parties together. It wasn't in this case. It may be that once the trial began, the judge sat the 2 parties down and said, I don't want this trial to go on. You need to settle.
Leave that for both of you.
Yeah. It may be that Apple saw something in Qualcomm's presentation, or Qualcomm, actually, I think Apple presented first. I'm not sure, what happened, but something happened, obviously. Maybe they looked at the jury and said, we're going to lose. But something happened on Monday that caused them to come to the table and settle today. So
that's actually a good observation, because sometimes a judge will not direct to the two parties to settle, but indicate that the situation as it stands right now says that now isn't a really great time, wink, wink, for you to settle before we move forward for reasons that are apparent to everybody inside this courtroom. That will take the bravado out of a lot of people.
Yeah, I think that's the case. I don't have a lot of experience, but I have a little bit of experience with this, and I kind of know, the stages of how this happens. Of course, these companies have millions to spend on attorneys, but these fees get high. And I think really one of the things that's most scary for these companies, I know it has been in the past for Apple, is discovery. And now that's already happened. So I'm not sure what happened. I think it's very intriguing.
The lawyers won, Leo. The lawyers won.
The lawyers always win, Rene. That's a given.
Yeah.